Okay, this is the critical lap. This is the critical lap. Confirm.
Leave me alone. I know what to do.
Welcome back to the Critical Lap. Daniel, how are you?
Doing so good, man. Doing so good. It's race weekend.
It's race weekend.
We're fresh off of a really good race weekend.
0 days to race, which apparently is what that symbol means behind me, apparently.
Love it. Love it.
I hope.
Your dry race art skills are top notch, by the way.
I've been told that many times. I've been told that that's the only medium in which I perform well. For all of our Chinese fans out there, please confirm whether I've written race 0 and I've done that thing where I got a tattoo that means peace, but really doesn't mean peace. It means take out or something. So yeah, please confirm for us. Big spoiler weekend, Daniel. Spoiler alert, Piastri won.
Piastri winner, third time, fourth time.
Yeah.
What is that?
Third time win for Piastri of the Grand Prix.
F1 career.
Yeah. Lewis won the sprint.
Yep.
First win for Ferrari.
This is for the soundbite. Lewis won.
The
sprint race.
The sprint race. Lewis won, but Ferrari was disqualified. What other spoilers do we have?
Lance Stroll was on merit in the top 10 for a few laps.
Yeah.
Alex Albon led the race on merit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I shouldn't say on merit. He was just one of the last few to pit.
Right.
Really cool things happened this weekend.
All kinds
really
of cool
things.
I mean, quite literally, the front spoiler of Leclerc's car broke, or at least what we call in America spoilers. I think they're called wings in England, and I don't think that's wrong, given that they quite literally are wings that lift you downward, push you downward.
They lift you downward. Yeah. So is a wing confined to only creating lift?
It's a great
lift.
Do you know what? I don't know if it is because on submarines. This is a Formula One podcast. Just bear with us. On submarines, I think they have wings as well, like downward angle or whatever to go underwater. Welcome to the Critical Lap podcast. We're so glad that you joined us. I hit you with all the spoilers right off the bat. Last week we kind of warned people, but this morning I bumped into a guy who was wearing a hoodie with Lando Norris on the back, and it's kind of rare to bump into an F1 fan out in the wild in America, at least. And I said, "Oh, you big
a
F1?
Lando Norris fan, even then, right? Like, so good on him for being a Lando Norris fan."
That's right. Maybe just like Ferrari overall, or Lewis Hamilton or Verstappen. And so I said, "Are you a Formula One fan?" And he turned around and he went, "Yeah, Piastri just won the Grand Prix today." And I was trying to avoid spoilers because I hadn't had a chance to watch the Grand Prix yet. And I was like, thanks a lot for just.
Thank you, American Lando Norris fan.
Thank you, America.
Thank you. See, okay, look, so. Ruben, you and I have been talking F1 for a long time, since way before this podcast even started, right?
Yeah.
We just innately have that courtesy of like, hey, how's it going? Happy Sunday.
Yep. It's called common decency.
By the way, you watched the race yet?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a no, it's like, okay.
Yep.
You don't say it's a good one. You don't say, oh, buddy, just wait. You just say, all right, well, is the weather nice where you are?
Yeah, that's right. You just back off. Leave the message untouched.
Yeah.
Maybe we're missing the common courtesy around that, because if you were to walk into most places and announce like the score of the latest football game, you'd get lit up, right? Like people would say no spoilers. If you go to work or something like that. I mean, it is March Madness season. I think people just generally watching the games while working, quote unquote. But
that, and March Madness is like having 3 races every single day to watch
every day.
2 weeks?
Sometimes at the same time.
Yeah, sometimes at the same time. So I think with most sports, like if it's a day old, you can probably talk about it.
You can talk about it.
But here's the thing: we
statute of limitations.
There's a very short one. But for us here in America, the sport really isn't designed around our waking hours.
How dare they?
Listen,
when they invented the sport 75 years ago, I cannot believe they didn't schedule their races to be on U.S. time.
Yeah.
Well, we do need to come up with some. Maybe we can cover that later today. We need to maybe put some standard operating procedures, some protocols out there for the U.S. fans. It is a growing market, so be aware. Basically just be aware of where your fellow Americans might be. Hey, before we jump into it, welcome back to the Critical Lap. This is your number one spot for F1 fans, believe it or not, especially those who are maybe just getting into it, maybe just picking it up, but loving it. That's my case. If this is your first time here, welcome. Whether you're new or you've been listening for a little while, Please make sure you like and subscribe, leave a comment. It makes a huge a difference to us. And make sure you're not missing out on any content, new episodes that are coming out. But we're glad you're here. My name is Ruben. I'm one of your hosts of the Critical Lap. A little bit of a newcomer to the sport, although I feel like I'm picking up traction fast. I jokingly call myself the bandwagon fan. The hat is just full demonstration of that today. A little bit of a bandwagon fan. I'm proud of that fact and glad to be here.
I love the hat, Ruben. And welcome, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining. Like Ruben said, this show is the number one place, especially for fans who want to learn, who don't really want to get lost in the weeds. Whether a spoiler is just an upside down wing or not. That's will right. touch on those things, but we're not here to define whether it's one or the other.
Yeah.
I'm Daniel, your other host here. Let's just call me the resident expert here on this podcast at the very least. I know a thing or two. I've been watching for a while. Drive to Survive came late in my Formula One career. Great nonetheless. Really good.
Some of my earliest moments on Drive to Survive.
Yeah. So welcome back, everyone.
Yeah. Glad everybody's here. And we will not pivot on my hat. For those of you who can't see if you're listening online or in a podcast form, we will get to what my hat says. For those of you online, you can already see, but we'll get to that in a minute. I think we've got to start off today with an overview of the Chinese Grand Prix and sprint race. I think Grand Prix first, though. Piastri wins. It's a big win right off the bat.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Deserved at least some kind of consolation prize after the really unfortunate outcome of the Australian Grand Prix home race. So, yeah, good on him.
That's what he said was basically, I think I deserve this after last week.
Yeah.
Which is a lot for Piastri. He's a pretty laid back guy.
I think it's a lot for anyone to say. Like anyone to like walk into like, some sort of like celebration and be like, I deserve this.
Right.
But I agree. He earned at least something.
Yeah. People. So what do you have to say about your first win? I mean, I think we all agree. I had this coming. Yeah. I'm the most deserving here. I think, it's hilarious to hear him say anything. Piastri's usually like, yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good race.
He's a serious dude. He's ice cold. It's almost like, whether it's on purpose, whether it's just his personality, it seems like if you're a really good driver, you do have a certain amount of just chill. You're there, you're with it, you're serious, you can kind of handle anything.
Right.
So
yeah, unless you
I like that about Piastri.
Cut off or hit or knocked off the track, and then you kind of flip out a little bit.
Sure.
At least that's what I've seen a lot of good drivers do.
Yeah.
It was a great win for him right off the bat. He came out strong from the get-go. First pole, I guess it's worth mentioning, in qualifying, first pole position of his entire career. Which is, that's got to be, if not a first, that's got to be pretty rare to get your first pole position after two wins. He won 2 races, then got a first pole position. That's surprising to me. But
so I don't know if you would say that he earned the spot on the front row that then got him into the right position, or if he got into the right position and then earned the win. I wonder what you think here. Is a win from any position other than pole better or more deserved? Or is a win from pole better or more deserved?
Oh, I think that depends on who's driving and what the team is, right? Because I last season, no, I'll go back to 2023. Verstappen would get pole, Verstappen would win. Verstappen would get pole, Verstappen would win. And it did start taking away some of that value, right? Like after a little while, you start feeling like, well, yeah, he's got the fastest car. I will say I was really impressed with Piastri today. It's simply because maybe it is the Chinese Grand Prix. I mean, one of the things we really talked about was that eternal turn one. It's like 270, 300 degree turn
it's
one.
Wild. Yeah.
All the way around. It's like a giant
and I'm thankful for it. You know what I mean? It brought us a ton of action this week.
Well, by the end of that race, I still was trying to figure out which way do you, where do you want to be to pass somebody? Like inside, outside, I don't really understand.
Right. How many times can you give in somebody the switcheroo? Like how many points on that turn can you dive to the inside, back out, and then come to the outside? Because then it just snaps right back to the left, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well,
and it's got to unwind itself, sort of, and you're kind of coming down the hill as you're going around.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense on that turn, like the phrase moving under braking. Like they use that a lot when the drivers are coming up to a turn. That whole turn is a braking,
Right.
and they just swerve around. What my point was going to be is Piastri going in off pole position on that. It's on this track in particular, that first turn, you're extremely susceptible to someone who came in at a different angle. If you cover off the inside, that's not necessarily very good.
Right.
So I was surprised he held from the beginning, and that was the last we saw of him. I don't remember. He doesn't say much anyway, but he didn't have a whole lot to say on this one.
You know, he did sort of dominate the rest of the race. Lando did seem to have, let's just say, chances once in a while.
Yeah.
But it never really seemed like Lando gave it that much of a shot. It's almost like he was in dirty air a lot, and he realized that. Here's my theory, right? I think it's a 2-stop race, or it's understood to be a 2-stop race.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much degradation for you to try to go 1-stop. Ultimately, again, another spoiler alert. I'm going to hit you with a spoiler just like Leclerc hit Hamilton with a spoiler.
Too soon.
Too soon.
Too soon.
Terrible. That's a dad joke
lost.
for everybody.
They both lost.
They did, yeah. So everybody at the beginning of the race is just kind of going 95%. You know,
Right.
It's like it's almost like the beginning of a boxing match where it's just a lot of dancing and a little bit of
Singapore Grand Prix.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, that's exactly Singapore, Monaco. I mean, it's these races where you're like, all right, who's going to make the first move, right? Because you can't just go too hard at the beginning and then you know, reap all the rewards at the end. You're going to pay for that midway through or halfway through or second half of the race. But the drivers really got into their groove. You heard Russell say a few things. Hey, this could be a 1-stop. Albon had just the most response to his racing engineer. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think you know, Piastri had the benefit of like, look, I'm in clean air and everybody's going to go 95%. I'm just going to make the most of this and, you know, stay ahead.
Yeah. For sure. And I definitely thought that the radio message from Albon, the radio message from George was throwing a little smoke though. There were a couple of times where he mentioned, like, I think we can keep going, and then he dives into the pit almost immediately. But George is also known for, what was the Grand Prix last year where I don't think it was Silverstone, was it? Where he decided to go long. He said he could make it, and he just didn't stop and ended up winning the Grand Prix. What did he win last year? I'll look it up.
I forget if it was Spa. Did he win Spa? Because he won Spa and then was disqualified on a weight issue, which is very, like, I think one of the Ferraris is what happened to them here at the Chinese Grand Prix. And a decent performance out of both of them, to be honest. Unfortunate that it got, you know, rugged or whatever.
Right.
But so I think maybe you're talking about Spa, but I would have to go back and look at the specifics.
It looks like he won. It must have been Austria. I think he won in Austria. Well, he almost had 3, remember, and then he got disqualified for that ugly issue reared its head again today. He got disqualified for being underweight. Didn't pick up enough rubber on his tires. Right?
I don't know if we talked about this, Ruben, but that's you said it right there. They had a weird. They didn't do let's just call it a victory lap. They didn't do a cool down lap.
Right.
Everybody got across the line and then immediately did a U-turn back into the pits. Don't know why. Not really sure. But it didn't give him the chance to like
pick up rubber.
We
need to explain that maybe a little bit. I probably most fans know this. Those tires are so hot when they do their cool down lap at the end of a race, they will purposely go offline. I don't know. Nobody can prove anything, right? But they will purposely go offline to pick up the little marbles of rubber.
Marbles,
kicked off all through the race. And they will melt back onto the tire. And there is debate that was one of the reasons why George Russell was underweight last year was he didn't pick up enough extra rubber on his tires prior to weighing.
Well, if you're a Formula One team and you're competing on such thin margin, like you are taking into account like how much weight you can lose in the car when you're on the last lap and the fuel's all done or whatever. And you like if you're not taking into account that you're going to pick up those marbles, and let's say it's 2 pounds of marbles,
right,
on 4 tires that are, you know, as wide as a barn. Guys, if you see the end of the race and you see cars pull up to stop, or, you know, the first, second, third place cars pull up to stop, and you see those tires, that is not what they look like when they're racing. That is just that last lap, and they've been running over bits and pieces of rubber that fly off the tire as they race around the track.
Right. Which those margins are really small, but it's really important. Okay, hold on though. I do want to. We're jumping all over the place here, but I will say, since we're already talking about the fact that Leclerc was disqualified for weight issues this year, another spoiler alert: Leclerc was disqualified, and Pierre Gasly for Alpine was disqualified for weight issues, being below the minimum weight. At the end of the race, they weighed them in and disqualified them, took their time off the board. Hamilton was disqualified because the ground plate that you see creating sparks when they drag the ground was less than 9 millimeters, I think is the minimum limit. So he was running a little low and grinding that down too much. So both Ferraris out of it, both Leclerc and Gasly. My immediate thought was, wait a minute. How much does that little end plate?
Yeah, how much does the end plate weigh?
On the end of Leclerc's? Because he got that clipped off, I think, like lap 1 or 2. It was very early that he caught the back end of Hamilton and ripped off his end plate.
Another spoiler alert, seemed to prove as an advantage for Leclerc. Leclerc had better better pace most of the race.
I can't argue with that.
Even the commentators were like, maybe it would, because it's lower to the ground. And they just kind of did a lot of mental gymnastics to kind of explain why. But I think it just comes down to the balance. There's less downforce on the front. Maybe that was the better setup for the car. From the sprint race, which Ferrari more or less dominated, right? They had you come out of Parc Fermé, you can make changes to the car between sprint race and the Grand Prix. So they, as Ferrari were, tweaking and quote unquote improving the car, maybe they just overdid it on that front bias.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. We have also talked about how close these margins are just in general. At that rate, a few kilograms of fuel lower. Is Hamilton better in that car under low fuel weight, which is why he was dominating in a short 20-lap sprint format the day before, and Leclerc dominated the first half? I don't know. It does seem to point to the fact that not only are the margins really small, but the impact of small things on the car, no pun intended, little end plates or wings, may or may not have a huge impact on the car. Together, collectively, they do. I was genuinely surprised given how much that wing was bending. And we've been lectured over and over again about how that front wing, it sculpts the air going over the rest of the car. I was genuinely surprised by how little impact that had on Leclerc. And I mean, at one point he literally was saying like, this is what did he say? This is foolish or something, like it's a shame, right? We need to get Lewis out of the way because I've got more pace. Surprising.
His racing engineers called out to him after the event, and they were like, hey, you've lost 30 to 40 points. And I think they're measuring downforce and on a point system, or maybe they call, a certain decimal place
out of 1,000
points. Yeah. Whatever it was, it's not that many. But the commentators, David Coulthard, Julian Palmer, the guys that I listen to on F1 TV, they're all, former driver. The two of the three are former drivers at least. And they're like, well, that's
they
a
were
lot.
all surprised. Yeah.
They're like, that's a lot of downforce lost.
Specifically, the points were a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't know if this was like a whose line is it anyway situation where the points don't match. Just 40 points lost out of how many? 60,000, man.
Well, it seems to be like a universal language of sorts, right? And they acted like it was a big deal. So I'm not the technical expert here.
They didn't adjust for inflation.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah. 30 points in 2016, not the same.
Yeah. I honestly, really disappointing for Ferrari. They went from high to low. Really exciting during the sprint. Really cool to see Lewis Hamilton bring in his first win with Ferrari. A pretty dominant win. I mean, I think he was up to like 6 or 7 seconds at the end there, ahead of the next in line, and didn't really seem to struggle that much during the sprint. And then just was not there for qualifying or the race.
Really looked good. Really looked good the whole time. And to be honest, at that point, it might have been foolish of me to try to forecast the rest of the weekend. But I was thinking, man, Verstappen did really well in the sprint race too. But with the results we had from Australia and the prediction that kind of gives you for the season, and then we see the sprint race in China, and it's like, whoa, the variety of this year is going to turn out to be really good. Yeah. Well, but alas,
we were all thinking it like Lewis Hamilton, he's back. This will be his 8.5 or 9th championship, depending on how you count. By the way, I'm new enough to the sport, and I know this is going to anger some people. Hamilton's got 8 championships. Verstappen's got 4. He got one too, but 2021 was a double championship. All right, so here's my hot take of the week. All right, Ferrari crashing out, Piastri with the win. McLaren looks fine. McLaren looks great. There's no problem with McLaren. Overall, my opinion was they were performing really strongly. It's tough because Norris had a rough sprint qualifying. He had a kind of a rough sprint, a bad start, and then he looked great today. He passed Russell right off the bat. He passed Russell again when it counted. He had a great start. He performed really well, and he had a messed up brake pedal. I'm not saying he was as good or better than than Piastri, but Norris had a good day. And McLaren looks very strong.
Those two guys are great matches for those cars, and that car, I think happens to just be the best car on the grid this year.
Yeah,
just full stop, best car, best balance, best speed. Just really doing great. Really doing great. I think the one theme that you can tie over what little portion of the season we've seen so far, the one theme that continues and is true for both weekends is McLaren. That's just McLaren is doing well.
McLaren's doing well. And honestly, that's got to be scary from a constructor's standpoint for everyone else. Because, I mean, whether you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Whether it's Norris or whether it's Piastri, you're getting beat this week by McLaren in all likelihood. I mean, the odds are good.
Yeah.
Right? You've got Verstappen, you've got maybe Lewis or maybe Leclerc performing well weekend to weekend. George Russell's doing well for Mercedes. But in terms of a complete package, best car, and then arguably the 2 or 3 best, 2 out of 3 or 4 best drivers on the grid, McLaren is formidable. That said, we've got a solid 4-team race at this point between McLaren, Ferrari, realistically Mercedes, and then Team Max. Because I refuse to say Red Bull is good. It's Team Max. He's not out, and you cannot count him out. So it's a solid 4, almost 5-team race between those top teams right now.
I agree with you. I think that we could even see some other mid-tier teams improving over the course of the year, and I don't think they're going to contend against McLaren per se as the top team or against any of the 4 for a first or second place in the title.
Right.
But you never know what can happen if they're chipping away at the 3rd, 4th place team. They're gonna there's points out there to be earned, and there's places to gain for a team that you might not expect this year. As you know, I'm still pulling for Williams. I love Carlos Sainz. I like Alex Albon. I really think Williams could be one of those teams that kind of inches their way up over the course of the year. I'd love to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. They've already scored. They've matched their point total for last year, Williams. Haas just took a big step forward. Haas has got to be one of the big success stories of the day outside of sort of the winners. And I know some of that was due to some of the DQs and other issues.
I mean, both Haas's were in the points without the DQs on merit.
Both Haas's were in the points.
So tell me that's not a huge improvement over last year.
Well, and listen, I got to say it. I don't think Esteban Ocon is my favorite driver, but I got to say he had maybe one of the passes of the day going off in the grass. I can't remember what lap that was, but that
was early in the race. That was a fun one to watch. Was he passing Doohan? Who was he passing?
It was. Hang on a second. I wrote this one down because I thought that was pretty gutsy. He was passing Antonelli. On lap 16.
Yeah,
right down that starting straight.
Imagine that. A Haas passing a Mercedes.
Yeah.
What do you know?
And Bearman looking really racy. Granted, it was on a medium tire, and it started to kind of fall apart a little bit on him by the end of the race, but passing Doohan, Sainz, who else did he pass? Gasly a little bit later on. Gasly for the points. I know Gasly got disqualified, but Gasly was 11th place because Bearman went on by him. He had a lot of he looked really racy as well. And Bearman didn't have a great weekend in Australia, so it was good to see him have a strong one this week.
Yeah. Did you catch the chow every time he passed somebody?
I did, and it was so quiet too. Just
chow. I love
it. I do love seeing the rookies get a little bit of mojo back, a little bit of fire back. Antonelli did fine last week. He did great this week as well, or did okay this week. But I'm waiting for Doohan and Hadjar in that group to get their mojo back. Yeah. Well, speaking of Hadjar, question for Racing Bulls had a great. That's right, Barb. Barb had a great weekend overall, right up until their strategy just chucked them out of any point contention for the Grand Prix.
Yeah. And I don't blame the team. I don't blame the drivers. I think that they were extremely sharp. In fact, I think maybe Haas doesn't have as good of a overall race outcome. Maybe they don't both finish in the points.
Right.
If Racing Balls doesn't opt for the second stop. I mean, they were sort of leading the charge on the undercut was strong this race. And for those of you who don't know, the undercut is when you pit a little bit early so that the laps that everyone else is trying to get out of their current tires, you're doing them on brand new tires and you're gaining more in those laps than they might get out of extending and having better rubber later in the race. So the undercut was really strong. We saw several people do it. But it seemed like VCAR, Barb, Racing Balls, whatever we want to call them today, they were really leading the charge and they were benefiting greatly from it. So second stop, two-stop strategy for most was understood to be the case. On their second stop, they sort of jumped the gun and then everyone else was like, you know what? One stop, never mind.
Yeah.
Psych.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it was, who came out with the, it was Albon. Albon, they kept commentating on this, that Albon came out with those hards and ran them for a long time and effectively tipped everybody off that they were doing just fine.
Yeah.
On lap 9,
on lap 9, his racing engineer comes out and says, hey, we're happy. He can't even finish the sentence. We're happy with the tires. Albon's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm better than everyone. Let's relax. I'm very comfortable. Let's quote Alex Albon. I'm better than
everyone.
And he sounded like he had been woken up from a lounge chair next to a pool. He's like, hey.
Yeah, I was just stop. Leave me alone.
I'm good.
Yeah, let's all relax.
Yeah.
Woken up.
One of my favorite moments of the race. And Albon, I mean, that's why he was, P1 for a few minutes, a few laps, because he was just extending his race so much. And I got to throw some credit towards somebody else that did the same thing, who I don't like giving credit to. You might know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's old green helmet.
Old green helmet. Old, I can't say it. His name is Stroll. Stroll did great. Stroll
did great.
I mean, Stroll is kind of, I think on the one hand, he showed a really interesting, well-driven stint. On the other hand, he ruined the race for everybody because he basically proved to everybody that the hard tire could do what they all were like, I think it can do it, maybe. And everyone just watched Stroll.
Right. In
addition to that, he just slowly trickled his way down from, the top 3 or 4, whatever his highest position was. And for that reason, wasn't given the blue flags. When you're not in contention for the position that you're in,
right?
Usually because you've been lapped, you get a blue flag, and you should, like, the stewards are kind of forcing you to get out of the way for the people who are competing against each other. You don't want to be in P17 while P3 and P4 are ahead and behind you, and you're messing up the race for P3 and P4. So
no, that's true. Yeah,
Stroll unusually was in that contention in those positions and not getting a blue flag. So he kind of, he was just kind of the thorn in the side of the rock in the shoe of everybody as they were, kind of getting back up into their regular positions after pitting.
Yeah.
So I would say good day for Stroll. He probably had a good time running that race, but he definitely was forcing some outlier outcomes for people.
Well, and you're right. There were a lot of teams. I think if you look at their change from grid placement to final end of the race, anybody in the top 11, 12 benefited from everybody past 7th, 8th place benefited from all the retirements and disqualifications.
Sure.
So with Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, and Pierre Gasly dropping out, that was originally 5th, 6th, and 11th place. So keep this with, take this with a grain of salt, but Lance Stroll qualified 14th and finished 9th.
Mm-hmm.
Again, 3 of those arguably were given to him, but we could say the same thing about Ollie Bearman or Esteban Ocon. So they got a lot of points given to him. He qualified or ended up finishing the race 9th, brought in some good points, had a good race.
And I've said it before. Everybody earns whatever outcome they get, right? It's all it takes a village. So your ability to run the race well and not be disqualified, it's just like putting in a better lap, you know?
Right. Yeah. Stroll did well. There were a lot of people that had a good run. I think Kimi Antonelli was driver of the day by the votes.
He was. Did you hear his reaction?
No, I didn't. What did he say?
They're like, Kimi, driver of the day, congratulations. He said, me? That's weird.
Kimi Antonelli would be great at commentating because I also felt like that was weird. I didn't think that didn't seem like a fair result, given that he did great. He did fine. He's probably the most consistent of the rookies. I think he managed to move up 2 positions. He qualified 8th and finished 6th. But
I think he qualified 8th and finished 8th and then was bumped up to 6th.
Yeah, that's right.
But like when he was getting driver of the day, there were no disqualifications yet. So I think he was getting voted driver of the day
with no
finishing
passes.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Oliver Bearman qualified 17th and ended up finishing technically 8th, although he finished 10th.
Yeah.
So Ollie Bearman finished in the points from 17th, technically 9 overtakes, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, 9 place jump. Even if you take away 2 of those, he's still the lead. He's still in the lead in terms of all of his passes, unless you count Liam Lawson, who I think was number 2. So I would have given that to Ollie Bearman. I think Ollie Bearman actually had some really good passes. He seemed like he was moving up the field.
He had aim assist. After he got onto the mediums, it's like he was playing with aim assist. He could just pick anybody off he wanted to. He was just kind of, he'd come up behind you quick. He'd give you a few turns to actually, and then he would just be like, all right, I'm going to put you out of your misery. It seemed like he was having a really fun time with it. And when I saw that after his like nice early stint on the mediums, I was like, this guy's getting driver of the day. He's performing. It's fun to watch. Surely. Right. And no shade to Antonelli. I think he had a good race and I like Antonelli, but,
no, but we finally come to the point of what I really wanted to talk about today. The biggest win of the day, Haas. Haas had arguably the most exciting day. I will grant you that if Ferrari had finished where they'd finished with all those points and with Lewis's win yesterday, but just in general, Haas has to have one of the best performances of the day. 5th place for Esteban Ocon. 8th place for Ollie Bearman, finally. It would have been 7th and 10th prior to the disqualifications. But that's 7th and 10th is still really good for Haas. Best of the midfield or backfield.
Well, and you were already talking about some of their stats earlier. I mean, where they started, where they ended, they finished in the points on merit. It's not that they finished in the points barely because somebody got DQ'd or because maybe there was a DNF that would have affected them. I think that they got into the points on their own, and then they got they got a little push, a little cherry on top from the DQs ahead of them. So
and votes aside, I know this is just us voting, and I voted on helmets, and I voted Lance Stroll as one of the best helmets, and I regret that decision now because I saw it this weekend and it wasn't a great look. But if we're just voting, the overtakes that come to mind, you've got Norris and Russell kind of going into those turns. A few others that kind of come to mind, but Ocon going offline in the grass on that straight and Ollie Bearman blowing past people on that medium tire. That was exciting to see for a midfield team too, especially that doesn't get to do that a whole lot.
Right.
And they had a good sprint race. They finished 15th and 16th in the sprint race, which is not incredible, but 2-point jump or 2-space jump, 2 position jump for Esteban Ocon.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just about written him off. He seemed like he was having a quiet time at Haas, but great performance by Haas and exciting to see. And just another testament. I think there was a comment that I think it was Palmer who made the comment at the end of the race that had Alpine technically, but if Pierre Gasly had finished 1 step higher, he would have gotten that final point for 10th place, and all 10 teams would have scored points in the first 2 race weekends. I think you had to wait till the second to last race of last season for Stake Sauber to get their first points.
Yeah. So where I think we got a good bit of variety on the podium last year, it did seem to sort of everybody kind of like predictably ended up where they were supposed to be or whatever, where you thought they might be. This year so far, it seems like that rank is still getting figured out, and it's fun to watch those mid-tier or bottom-tier teams, perform on a specific day or have a certain little strokes of luck or strokes of, good performance. I like that. I think it makes, because there's not a constant battle at the top. It's some battling, it's some, status quo running. It's like, all right, tires are kind of dead. Let's wait for the pit stop, etc. So then what do you do if the rest of the race is just one big long DRS train, that we talked about, or one big long that's just the predictable lineup? Then, I kind of lose interest middle of the race. But when there's something happening, like when there's racing like what Haas, impulsed or generated for us today, or when there's things like Albon and Stroll, being on merit, pushing to the nth little drop of grip that those tires might give them all the way as far as they could. That is what I think makes a really good race to watch.
Yeah, agreed. And that was one of the first things that really attracted me to watching F1 after I watched Drive to Survive, got the hype and thought, yeah, but am I going to actually enjoy the racing? The thing that I've really enjoyed the most is how if Piastri's out front by 5 seconds, they don't show Piastri. That's not fun to watch. They show Ollie Bearman passing people in the midfield, or a battle that's going on for 3rd place or 4th place, because every place matters. And, almost every place matters. But either way, the battles still matter. And I thought it was interesting that I think it was yesterday, the sprint race. Can't remember if it was the sprint race or maybe today. Hadjar was still trying to pass at the end. And it didn't matter. He was out of the points, but it was still worth taking that shot. I think it actually did matter, because with all the disqualifications, he might have come close to the points today. Really disappointing. I know we just briefly touched on it. Racing Bulls is another one of those mid-tier teams. I made a comment, I think, posted something out there and got a lot of reactions about Tsunoda, that everybody wanted Tsunoda in that second Red Bull seat. Everybody felt like Tsunoda was the obvious choice there. And his performance this year only seems to underline that. I made a joke that I think you want to be at Racing Bulls right now rather than Red Bull. And I mean that entirely just because I don't think that's true. I think you want the paycheck for going to Red Bull. I think you want the notoriety for Red Bull.
Oh, sure.
But in terms of just having a good weekend, Racing Bulls, that pressure is so much lower. The performance is so much higher than expected that it's got to feel like more of a win to go back to the garage with a 6th or 7th place finish in a Racing Bull than to be in a Red Bull seat like poor Liam Lawson and be dragging the back of the line here.
Yeah, I agree with that. Max did sort of come alive, I don't know, 35, 40 laps into the race. And I thought to myself, like, okay, maybe Max has just been waiting to see what everybody else does. And maybe there's, 3 or 4 positions he could gain here that he knows he's got. He's just protecting his ability to do that.
Right.
But then if you think about, okay, he came alive lap 37 or whatever, and he was P6 or P7 at the time. Who would he be fighting if the Racing Bulls had not gone for a 2-stop strategy? Where would Max line up there, and who would he have to contend with? And we might have even seen a Red Bull versus Racing Bulls, duel. Tsunoda, Hadjar, whoever might have ended up, getting up there for that. Probably Tsunoda, honestly. But
we almost did for a split second, and then one of them pitted. It was pretty early on in the race. They were closing in on each other, and then one of the red, I think it was Tsunoda, pitted. So it didn't make any difference. But.
Yeah, there were several of those this race too, where they were kind of some would have been interesting fights. As soon as Max was within striking distance of Lewis, I think that was lap. I think that was lap 38. I think that's what I'm thinking. That Max kind of came alive and caught up. Lewis went in for tire change. So that would have been cool to watch. Racing Bulls, Barb, V-Carb, whatever versus Red Bull would have been cool to watch. But I do want to talk about Liam Lawson a little bit here.
I know, I do too. I've
got a little bit of sympathy for the guy. Seeing him in qualifying, it just didn't seem like he was going for it. It seems like he's just still trying to get it figured out. And you heard him talking a little bit in sprint qualifying, where he says, I'm sorry guys, I just can't figure out the tires. I just can't get the tires to come on, right? So. Right. You've got to go out. You've got to warm up the car, the tires, et cetera. You got to figure out, like, okay, I've got the heat in the tires that give me the grip that they're supposed to give me, because they're not designed to give you the grip when they're cold, because they're not cold when you're racing. So he was struggling with that. It seemed like in just regular GP qualifying, he couldn't figure it out. He was out in Q1. So, in the race, whereas you saw in Australia, he got a good set of tires on, whatever compound worked for Australia. He was picking people off, kind of like Ollie Bearman did this weekend in the GP. We never saw that from him again.
No.
I do feel bad for the guy. I feel like it is a very, very hard, difficult car to learn and drive well.
Yep.
Speaks to the difficulty of the car, but speaks to the genius and incredible raw talent of Max Verstappen. But one point of view that was brought to my attention recently: what if this is just one big conspiracy? I don't know if you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but this was presented to me recently.
I love conspiracy theories. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but hit me.
Fellow Formula One fan.
Oh,
says to me, what if the second Red Bull seat is just impossible? What if the car isn't actually the same? What if it's just meant to be super hard to do anything? What if, Max has just kind of earned his place, but for some reason, whether it's Red Bull or the FIA or somebody pulling strings in the background, big racing, or I don't know what you'd call,
Right.
But what if it is just,
I think it's called dark racing. Yeah.
There you go. What if it's just, you won the title last year. We know you've got the best car. We know you've got the best driver. But we're going to leverage that.
That's enough. You can't have another driver in here.
Well,
because
it's kind of like, hey, the sport needs some churn. It needs some turmoil. It needs some zhuzh in the drama section, right? So like,
right.
Who better to give that handicap to than the winners of 4 titles or whatever?
So you just like that second car is just a dud, so that it keeps everything balanced.
So it keeps things balanced. So it's kind of your
highlights
opportunity.
That Max Verstappen is brilliant.
Think about this, right? Think about this. Red Bull had their 4-year stint before the recent regs, right? Yeah. And I think it was 2016. I could be wrong. It could be 15 or 16. It's been a decade or so. Max steps into the Red Bull. He came up from, it was Toro Rosso at the time, but he came up from, rookie series or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's on the development team, steps into the Red Bull car, instant victory. First race in the Red Bull, instant victory. I don't know if he had practice in the car before. I don't know if they did development that way or not. I don't know.
Right.
But Max Verstappen steps into the hardest car to drive, instantly wins a race. Barcelona, I need to double check the year. And since then, everybody else who's been in that car, especially newly in the car, just can't figure it out, just can't handle it, So
it's a good conspiracy theory. I'm not going to lie. It's
I don't
a good
like
conspiracy theory.
I'm of the opinion that the most boring, most predictable outcome or predictable explanation, that is what is reality. But conspiracy theories are fun, and that's what we're bringing to you today. I think there could be something to it. I don't know.
Well, I'm with you in terms of like, I tend to believe the most boring thing. I tend to believe that money talks, and that kind of tells you what they want. But I will put it this way. I have a slightly different conspiracy theory that's not really a conspiracy. It's more of just, actually maybe more conspiracy, less theory, and a little less pleasant to hear, which is that I think Red Bull has created a somewhat toxic situation for the secondary driver. Like just calling it what it is. I get it. It's a high pressure thing, and people are going to lecture you all the time about it's not a finishing school. Formula One's not a finishing school. You need to show up here and be ready to perform. I get that. However, we've already talked about the fact that Helmut Marko, and he mouthed off again this week talking about his drivers, about how we already talked about Bortoleto being a B-level driver, and then he's criticizing Hadjar for a moment of emotion. And it's like, well, what do you want from these guys? I mean, they spend their entire life to get here. They've only watched Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen win championships since they can remember watching F1, and now they're driving with them, right?
Yeah.
And they crash out their first lap. That type of attitude, knowing that that's sort of one of your senior leaders in the garage, right? Not somebody who's actually going to help you grow your career. Probably he is. I'm not giving him enough credit, I'm sure, for the good stuff he does. But when you have that, you've got Max Verstappen next to you. He's crushing it. He's trying to get his 5th win in a row. Everybody acknowledges he's one of the best. And you've watched a succession of drivers come into that second seat and ultimately kind of fail, right? Maybe they gave up a little bit, but Danny Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, help me out here. Alexander Albon, and then they brought in Sergio Perez.
Checo, yeah. I think Daniel Kvyat's in there. I forget if he had or what kind of stint he had, or if he just had a chance at it. I forget if he actually raced in the Red Bull. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Chewing them up and spitting them out. And I get it. They made their own choices. So I'm not pointing a finger at a particular thing. I'm just saying, I think that's tough. And I think Red Bull has to admit the fact that they've created a no-win scenario for your new driver coming in. And that's why they haven't gone and picked up Carlos Sainz, or why they haven't gone and picked up another hardcore driver, because they don't want someone to compete with Max. And all the other drivers know that. I'm not here to fight with Max. I'm here to do well under pressure, with everybody wanting us to get back to the top.
That's we've talked about Checo a good bit, and last year he performed early in the season, and he publicly said, this has always been my dream, which, as we know, it's every driver's dream. But when you publicly said it, and Max was kind of the preferred driver, he publicly said, this is always been my dream to be a world champion. I think he legitimately had his eye on that prize and thought that there was a clear path to it. And next thing you know,
this sounds like those late night programs about unsolved mysteries, where it's like, and then suddenly Sergio Perez stopped being able to race. What happened?
And the excitement that we're getting out of this, right? The excitement that I'm feeling just thinking about it, and it seems like maybe you're getting a little revved up too. I feel like
who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory?
So there's gonna be some post-op editing of this episode where we gotta add some of that ominous music or some
little caveats, like we are in no way calling Helmut Marko.
We do need some disclaimers for sure.
A conspiracy,
Dr. Marco, if you're listening to this, you're a wonderful human. You're an excellent,
a great
motorsport
doctor.
Consultant.
Brought so much to doctoring.
You've helped so many people throughout your career, and we appreciate,
I've heard,
love, and respect you so much.
It's what I hear that every day. I think about that every day.
Yeah.
Sorry, but you're saying the conspiracy is exciting. At least for me, it does. I will say, in all honesty, I am impressed with Max. I know he's a controversial figure. I kind of like his blunt approach. I like the fact that he will be friends with you and then cut you off and try to win the race and take his licks. I kind of like that.
I think we're getting another Max on the grid, where someone is proving them. Someone's ice cold. They're here. They're very serious. They're taking everything seriously. They're here to perform. They're not here for the lifestyle. They're here for to do something. And I think that's Oscar Piastri. So it's good that you like Max, because I think there's more Maxes out there.
Okay. I was going to say, Oscar Piastri is Max 2.0. He's just a little nicer. Maybe.
Yeah.
We're not sure. He doesn't really talk a whole lot.
Yeah, Max, if you're listening, we love you.
We love you.
We don't want to offend anyone at Red Bull, guys.
That's right.
But no, I mean, think about this, right? And this is not my own opinion. This is something that I've just sort of, it's been dropped into my brain like a seed. Piastri has all the cards, right? Like he comes into a team where Lando is the preferred driver. Lando has the most promise for being world champion. Lando has really kind of done all the homework for this team, and had his patience to get to where the car caught up to his driving ability. Piastri, if he behaves and performs, he's going to have a lot of leverage to say, "Hey, McLaren, look, I've proven myself. I need to be the number one driver, because if not, there's any number of seats out there that I could grab. I have proven myself as a fantastic driver. I've proven myself as taking a good car with a lot of potential and performing with it and getting results. So could that be the next Red Bull driver? Could that be the next whoever is the contender to McLaren? I don't think it's Ferrari. I think they're locked in.
Maybe.
Who knows? I think he can write his own ticket.
I think so. And I think it wouldn't surprise if Piastri was the next Red Bull driver. It wouldn't surprise me if he took Max's spot. And by take Max's spot, I mean Max decides to leave and go get paid more money, because if he's not going to win championships, either one,
he may as well get a new jet.
Either championship with Red Bull, he might as well get paid and have Piastri step into that role.
I like that. We're already talking about silly season, and it's only the second race of the year. Can you believe it?
I feel more and more that Max is going to be out after this season. He's just gotten kind of quiet. He's not as punchy. He's a lot more straightforward. He doesn't look either excited or mad or upset about anything.
He's
he
very
looks
content.
like he understands the situation.
Yeah, he's had some good, podium interviews, and he's just like, yeah, second place, I'm happy with that. That's kind of what I expected. He's very like, you're right. I 100% agree. I just wonder, is that just him being such a good racer, such a good driver, that he knows what the limitations are? He knows that the car isn't as good compared to the rest of the grid as previous years. And he knows that for him to win a championship this year, he has to be second through fifth, get those points consistently every single weekend, and maybe a couple of victories here and there, and that gets him another championship. I don't know. I was wondering
don't crash into any of the teams that you want to go join next year.
Yeah, exactly. Make some friends, buddy.
Yeah, stop crashing into people and yelling at George Russell in the room. You're going to want that second seat next to Kimi Antonelli.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, George Russell. Hey, just to be clear, I really do feel for Liam Lawson. I like the driver a lot. That's my overarching thought is, man, I wouldn't want to be him right now. I feel like that's a tough spot to be in. And I'm not trying to blame Christian Horner and Helmut Marko and everyone else. I think success brings lots of pressure, right?
Yeah.
Where they say, like, they've quoted that a lot of times. A piece of that is you can't win and be that dominant and not expect the standards to be really high for your other driver.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Like,
that's just the nature of it. But I do think there's a slight difference just in the way the teams seem to orient themselves. We got Valtteri Bottas over as a reserve driver for Mercedes. You literally get the feeling that Toto Wolff is a little bit more nurturing when it comes to these younger drivers coming in than Christian Horner. I could be wrong about that. I don't know. But anyway.
I think I agree with that comment about Toto Wolff, and I agree with what you're saying about Liam. As I said before, I do sympathize a little bit. I don't envy his position because it's probably lose-lose around every corner. The one thing I do envy about Liam Lawson still is his magnificent flow of hair.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's
great
something
hair.
I frankly am trying to emulate. Wearing the hat just because I'm not there yet. It goes Liam Lawson, Valtteri Bottas. And if you can't see me right now, my hand went a little higher for Valtteri.
Yeah. Eye level to like all the way over your head. So we know what you think about Bottas now. Yeah.
I hope that was clear before now. But Bottas for life. What's next? A couple of losers. We already know Ferrari. Lawson, I feel for the guy. I think you've got to chalk him up as a loser in the sense that he just had a tough weekend.
On paper, exactly. Yeah.
Technically on paper, he went up 5 spots in both races on merit. And I'm not counting the places he got for retirements. So yes, he's qualifying badly in the back row. He's a good driver and he's fighting his way through it.
I hope that he gets a longer stint this season to figure it out. I really do. I hope they don't give him the Alexander Albon, swap him out for somebody else that quickly. Yeah. Because I do think he's got potential. I think he got the seat because he's got potential. I think Helmut Marko, Dr. Helmut Marko, is good at what he does. He's always, you're always hearing about his opinion when it comes to drivers. I think that is his kind of specialty, is figuring out who the next young driver should be getting a shot at that seat. Which is why we hear so many ruthless things come out of his mouth. He's probably proven himself right more than once. So, I think Liam has his merits. I think he should get the chance to figure out the car, because I think if he can figure out that car and then combine it with whatever his natural or developed talent is, we should see a decent second driver at Red Bull.
I just want to be, listen, all the strategy aside, I just want Yuki in that car so that if it is that bad, we start getting him on the radio complaining about it, because Yuki complaining about the car is just one of the best parts of F1.
Well, I also think Yuki's had so much more time at the Formula One level that I think he should have a better, I would say he would have a shorter learning curve to get into that car. And I do want to see Yuki at the top. I want to see Yuki drive a car that can actually get him on the podium. That would be really cool.
Yeah. Well, that's basically it for the races. I don't know if you the only other loser I had, and this is really just a personal one because I was really hoping to see a lot from him. I heard Sainz raced this weekend. I know he did. I see his little acronym on the charts.
Yeah.
I think I saw him get passed once.
I think he had an event. I think he had like a little excursion, because the last time I checked in on our buddy Carlos, he was in last place. He was 10 or 12 seconds behind the next to last place. And I just thought, well, I don't want to dig through the driver cams and figure out what happened to him and go lap by lap. Maybe next time. Maybe next time.
Mowed a little grass, ran through some gravel.
Sure. It didn't seem to get anyone else's attention enough to do a replay. But I was excited for him after seeing practice. Obviously, Albon's getting something out of that car. Albon, naturally, though, he's had a couple more years, getting it under him. So, yeah.
Yep. Well, I did think it was a little disappointing not to see him come out a little stronger this week, especially after he crashed out in Australia. I was hoping to see signs. I'm a little bit of a Williams fanboy at the moment. You know me, Daniel. I am prone bandwagoning, hence my Haas hat. Almost said a hot hat. And
it is a hot hat.
Thank you. Only on
it is
me.
a hot Haas hat.
Hey, last thing, we didn't actually talk about this a whole lot. We didn't get to name this circuit. We did do a little bit of work on the Australian circuit, trying to name the Australian Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Chinese Grand Prix, it really needs a rename, because I think right now it's just called something like Heineken Grand Prix Circuit or something.
Well, I think you said it the last episode. The layout of the track is in the shape of the Chinese symbol for Shang.
Yeah,
I think it means rise. Maybe.
Oh, that might be right.
So there's something about the root name or the root word in Shanghai that has some meaning.
Okay.
And I think that that was sort of the inspiration for the layout of the track. I just think it's such a turny track. It's just very turny. There's so many turns in this track. Yeah. I know there's turns in every track, guys. Don't punch the wall or anything here. It's just that turn number one. It's just
is it turny?
It is the turniest turn that I.
It is the turniest turn of all the turns.
It is so turny. It's is it a toilet bowl?
Yeah.
Swirling around. It
doesn't go down though. I mean, it goes down. It goes down a little bit.
It loses. Now this track is a very flat track, 7.5 meters of total elevation,
which is
change or
odd
something
that
like
they named it after the Chinese symbol for upward, given that it's one of the flattest tracks elevation wise. Yeah, it is the turniest turn. It has the turniest turn one. I also thought watching that first one and the way it slows you down, that it feels like a roundabout. So I was going to throw Roundabout Racetrack out for you.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I like Roundabout.
Let's be honest, that's where we all do our own personal racing in our personal vehicles.
Oh yeah, that's where I find the limits of my very boring road cars.
Sure,
is in that roundabout. That is the tightest,
taking our minivans around.
Yeah, that is the tightest, most well controlled street driving scenario that you can get into and pretend that you're wringing the neck of your minivan.
Wringing the neck. Because those speed limit signs for roundabouts are yellow, which in America means suggested. And so you get that little squeal going. Roundabout Racetrack. That was one of my best ones. The other one was the Chinese Carousel, but it's technically not phonetically alliteration. Yeah,
I like Chinese Carousel.
Okay.
I hope there's no. I hope the Chinese Carousel wasn't at one point like a derogatory expression. You never know. I say Chinese wall in work scenarios all the time. That might be a little bit derogatory too. So apologies in advance to anyone who doesn't like walls or carousels being named.
If it's a great thing, you're welcome. And if it's not, genuinely sorry. I'm leaning toward Roundabout Racetrack myself.
I like Roundabout Racetrack.
It's got a good alliteration to it.
Yeah. So next week, guys, you can expect the Chinese symbol behind over Ruben's left shoulder there to be the Chinese symbol for Roundabout Racetrack.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was better than going. I thought it was better. I'm totally going to do that. Just give me a few minutes and a few more markers.
You're going to need a bigger marker board.
I got it. It's huge. It just doesn't come into camera. If you go on the shape alone, the only thing I can come up with is it looks like a cartoon dog, like Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah.
That's like slammed into the ground. Yeah. Face planted. Yeah. Or a child riding a small sled, which doesn't fit a low altitude racetrack. All right, we probably need to get some quick reactions here since we're running out of time. Daniel, I've got some quick reactions for you. Do you have some for me before we jump in?
You can start this one. I think I've got one or two, but let's hear yours.
All right, I've got a few for you, and I'll kick you off on one we were just talking about. Which was the spiciest radio message of the day at the Chinese racetrack? Hamilton, I'll tell you when we can swap. Leclerc, nope, when told that he should try to avoid the curbs on turns 8 and 10 in order to stop losing time. Tsunoda, when he was told not to, when he said, I want to use more of the front, and they said, don't do that. And he said, well, I want to. Or Albon saying, stop, guys, I'm the best. Let's all relax.
That is a very deep bench of talent for the contention here.
These are hard. This is a hard question. It was an easy one.
You're making me choose my favorite child here.
Quick reactions.
I would say if you said spiciest comment before hearing the list, I was going to go with, I'll tell you when we're going to split.
I'll tell you when we're going to swap. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you when we're going to swap. But I did like Tsunoda's race engineer reaction when Tsunoda said, but I want to.
Well,
I think he just said, all right. I think he said, all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
So there was some spicy and there was some sarcasm too. I don't know if you heard Leclerc go, yes, you've told me, I don't know, 10, 15 times already or whatever.
I forgot about that one.
It's just radio gold this weekend, guys. If you can find something, maybe we should put together a montage or a montage.
Yeah. A montage of the spiciest radio.
Just the juice dripping from the radio waves. It's just great.
I think I'm with you. Oh, that was a good one as well. I think the funniest was, well, I want to. Yeah. I think the most fun ones to hear was Albon saying, I'm the best, and I got this, like, let's all relax. And Chow, because I thought we were going to get a hat trick on that one. We got 2 Chows at least. But I think the spiciest for me was Hamilton, especially coming off last weekend.
Yeah.
When they kept giving him recommendations. And he's like, oh, guys, I'm trying. This time I'll tell you when we can swap.
Yeah. Last week was, hey guys, just leave me to it, please. Please just,
leave
can I just
it.
Drive the car, please? And this week is like, hey, look at me. Look at me. I am the captain now.
I am the captain. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to mute your line there, fellas. I'll let you know. Good stuff.
So quick reaction for you before we get off this topic.
Mm-hmm.
When Ollie Bearman heard about the DQs and his bumping up in the positions, did he say ciao to himself? Was he like ciao ciao? Like did he
listen, Scuderia, get you guys to just take a breath.
Did he pick up the phone and send it? Because he's a reserve driver at Ferrari, right? Or
if he said ciao, well, he was. If he said ciao after that, I think you're out. No, that would be too far.
Yeah.
He might have said it under his breath. Like, hey, did you hear the Ferraris got disqualified and you just got bumped up to 8th? Like, ciao. Oh, that's terrible news. I hate to hear that.
Is there a WhatsApp message out there, sitting on red from him to Vassar, ciao?
Do you know when we talked about this already back in 2021, 22, whenever it was George Russell was with Williams, but it was highly touted that he was coming to Mercedes. And he managed to pull a stupid move down the inside and crash into Valtteri Bottas, the other Mercedes driver. And, they kind of had to pull him aside and be like, hey, that's not a great look, crashing into the car of the team that you want to go to and then not apologizing for it. I think they had to pull Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda and Ollie Bearman aside and be like, guys, listen. When you pass your competition, maybe don't rub it in their face. Maybe just don't be too happy about the fact that you're outperforming.
Look, we know motorsport is fun. We know F1 is the pinnacle of motorsport. We get it.
Yeah, but save it for your group tech.
But what's interesting, is if you make the comparison to American football at the college level, at the NCAA level, you can't really go overboard with the celebrations. That's a penalizable behavior.
Yeah.
But once you get to the pros, you can
do anything.
You can put on a 3-act skit if you want. You can do whatever you want. Except
throw up anything that might reference weapons, apparently. Because it turns out grown men can be tackled at like a 40G impact from the side, right? And pop back up and be like, woo! But if you
so you're saying that the most
bow and arrow, that's
you're saying that the most violent sport is has some violence awareness, is what you're saying?
Well, they just don't want to make you have your hand look like a pistol.
Yeah.
That's a little too much, but this is not an NFL podcast, so I've got another quick reaction for you.
Let's hear it.
Which inter-team battle is going to be more, I'll use the word spicy again. That's my word of the day. Spoiler and spicy. Which team battle is going to be more spicy by the end of the year? Hamilton versus Leclerc or Norris via Piastri or versus Piastri?
So I think it's going to be Norris. Sorry, I think it's going to be Hamilton, Leclerc. Why? Because Norris, Piastri have had some time to figure out their differences and whatever. Papaya
they shared
rules.
a room for a little while.
Yeah. The honeymoon phase is over.
Yeah.
I kind of enjoyed seeing that intra-team competition happen from between Hamilton and Leclerc, even down to the point where Hamilton is like, I'll tell you when we're going to swap. And then, I don't know, 10 laps later, he's like, guys, come on, please help me. I need to know which turns I need to, you're not giving me anything. And I think at that point, you kind of heard some like, yeah, well, as we've said,
Sorry, who's this?
Yeah.
Oh, Hamilton, how are you?
Your call is very important to us.
We'll be right with you.
But that's a really good one. I think
I think you're right, though. It's got to be Hamilton Leclerc. If that's going to flare up.
If the competition between teams and cars isn't enough and you like a little bit of drama in your life, I think keep an eye on the Monegasque and the Brit. Keep an eye on Mr. Ferrari and Mr. Worldwide.
I think you're right about that.
Has all the records, greatest of all time.
Follow-up quick reaction. What's the name of their rules going to be called? We've got papaya rules on the McLaren side. When the first time they crash into each other, what will Ferrari come up with?
I think they'll reference Enzo. I think they'll reference kind of a Godfather-like figure. Sort of a little bit of lore, a little bit of legend. Looking down, kind of like I don't know if you follow American football. I'm sorry.
From time to time.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know why I even said that. Paul Bryant, he's always referenced as he's looking down.
You talking about Paul Bear Bryant?
Talking about the bear. The bear's looking down. The bear's looking down. I think Enzo's looking down, guys.
Enzo's looking down.
You gotta do right by Enzo.
Enzo rules. We talked about this when we tried to find what hammer time is in Italian because we were trying to figure out what they were going to say. Hammer time in Italian. I think whatever it was, it came out sounding like a really great fantasy novel. It was like The Time of the Hammer, which, let's be honest, I would read that. I think it's going to have to be Leclerc versus Hamilton. It does seem like Norris and Piastri, they already kind of know the deal. They've been together for a while. And I would love to see if Piastri gets mad. I don't want to see the guy to get mad, but I don't know if he can get mad.
Yeah, I mean, we want to get to know you, Piastri. Oscar, let us know. Is it in you? Will it come out?
Maybe that's a game they play at McLaren. Like, let's see if anybody can make Piastri mad today. And they just mess with him a little bit. Like, oh, is your helmet the wrong size? Like, yeah. Okay. You got any more for me?
Last quick reaction for you here. Who would win? We're talking reserve drivers, right? So you've got BOTTAS at
in a fight or in a drive.
In a drive. We got to do a drive.
Okay.
Who's going to win? We've got BOTTAS at Mercedes. We got Joe at Ferrari. We've got I'm blanking on his name. Argentinian driver from last year at Williams.
Colapinto.
Colapinto. We got Colapinto at Alpine. Mm-hmm. Who do you think in this year's car? Mm-hmm. What reserve driver can get it fastest across the line?
Colapinto is the only one that's going to get a chance, so it's going to be Colapinto. But I'm saying like dream scenario. We're gonna do 5 laps for reserve drivers, little mini sprint race in the actual cars.
In today's actual cars, yeah,
it's BOTTAS. That's a strong Mercedes.
I'm with you there.
It's a strong Mercedes.
And
it's BOTTAS.
Yeah. What's next? Even
What's next is exactly what he would say as he blew across the line, and people wondered why we ever let him go from Mercedes.
Right.
Yeah. Mistakes have been made all through F1, but that was one of the biggest ones. That's a great question. Yeah. I think it's BOTTAS. It was fun seeing Zhou Guanyu. I think they interviewed him prior to the Chinese Grand Prix. Obviously his home race, so nice being back. And Yep, I think it's BOTTAS. I think that's it. I think we've reached the checkered flag for today. It was an amazing Chinese Grand Prix. We've got a 2-week break, and then we'll see you back for the Suzuka Grand Prix, the Japanese Grand Prix in 2 weeks from now. Looking forward to that. We will likely do a race review prior to that. But again, big thanks to our listeners. Thanks for joining us. If this is your first time, thank you especially for joining us. And shout out to our legendary producer, the engineer on the pit wall, Chris B.
Chris B. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for joining. See you next time.
If you are enjoying the Critical Lap, please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe. leave a comment or review. We've had some great comments. It makes a big difference. We love hearing from the listeners.
Helps us out a lot. We love the engagement. We love hearing whether we are smart or not. We want to know.
Yeah, let's hear those conspiracy theories. I think that's what we really need is more F1 conspiracy theories. And on that note, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on the Critical Lap.
Later.